So, any guesses about what this could be, the greater gift? You have to answer because then it will be very one-sided.
What is a greater gift?
Pop quiz.
Love.
Love. Yeah, so it's a famous, famous chapter in the Bible, written by Paul. This is First Corinthians 13, and yeah, we usually hear this message in on weddings. I mean, in weddings. So I was just wondering whether you heard a message on First Corinthians 13 lately. Anybody has been attending uh, any weddings that they've heard a message on?
We attended one wedding the entire lockdown. I don't think the sermon was on on Corinthians 13.
So, and during the fellowship, I hope it was not done. Yeah, maybe it's a rare, though it's such a common passage to read and see these verses. Many of us have memorized it also, but it's good to hear some things more on this very famous chapter. Uh, though now, as I was telling, we hear this in weddings, but actually, this whole passage was not written with a wedding in mind. It was not even written for only couples or people who are going to say their vows. But actually, it was written for the church. So if you see, it was written for the members of the church. And if we go back to the context of this chapter, you'll see that Paul was writing to the Corinthians who were very divided by then. They had heard the gospel, they had grown, they had the gifts of the Spirit, but now it had come to a stage when they were boasting of their gifts, and one considered themselves better than the other. So they are saying, "My gift is like an eye, where eye is more important." So they were placing themselves above each other, and this was causing a lot of division. And Paul had already mentioned of how the body is meant to be made of different parts, and how each of them is having their place in the body. And so he goes on to say into this part, and I will show you. So he starts off this chapter by saying, I will show you the most excellent way. So there are gifts, but the most excellent. Now we always like to go for the best, and he was going to tell about the best of the gifts that we can have. So I'd like us to read First Corinthians chapter 13, verses 1 to 7. Can any one of you read? Jaden or someone?
Which verse?
Uh, Chapter 13, verses 1 to 7.
Can you tell me the full reference? I've opened the Bible.
First Corinthians.
First Corinthians. Oh, Jane, come and read.
If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gifts of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames but have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient, love is kind. Love, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud. It's not rude, it is not self seeking, it's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
Yes, thank you. So actually, it's a very long. Some more is there of it, and we can probably just go through that bit also later. But right now, if someone were to ask you what gift of the Spirit, what is the most important thing to you? Now, reading this chapter, we know that it is love, But generally, if you see, if you were to place in a order, would you say like people who speak serve the church better? Would you say that people who serve the poor or do things, so therein you could have different lists about what is most important. And this chapter starts off with saying Paul himself puts he talks it about himself here. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels. Now, we all know how the gift of speaking in tongues had come. It came on the day of Pentecost. It was a very obvious sign that the Spirit had come upon the disciples. And so they were able to speak in different tongues. Now, people who heard them, people from many places who heard them, were convinced that this was a supernatural event, that it was possible only through God. So that is one thing about speaking in tongues, and Paul himself says, I speak in tongues. But then he says about this speaking in the tongues of angels. Now, this is a little confusing, but if you go back to seeing, we all know that in Psalm 8, it talks about how the angels were made a little low, we human beings are made a little lower than the angels. And it is obvious through the Bible that the angels who came to speak, they were more wiser, they had more abilities. Uh, it's also said about how Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed by just a few angels. So they had superior knowledge and abilities. So he's telling, if I can be like that kind of a speaker, you know, even if I could have all those kind of gifts, but if this one factor was missing, that is of love, uh, it is like it is, what does he compare it to? What instrument is it sounding like? Here's a picture of it. It sounds like a clanging gong. And you remember, and you know that if a marching band were to only play these gongs or the cymbals, it would sound very bad, and it will be annoying to hear it. And this is what he compares. So all this superior knowledge, superior way of speaking, or even about the specific gift of speaking in tongues. Now, we could have different views about whether it is continued, people who have it. So there are many other views, but let's not get into that. But right now, we know that all these can cause a person to be puffed up. And then it becomes annoying, because then it is not glorifying God. So this is the first thing he talks about. And if you see in the second verse, he says about the gift of prophecy and uh, knowledge, the fathom all mysteries and knowledge. So it's something that everybody will like to have, like, like have the wisdom of Solomon, so you could know everything, you could learn anything as fast as, so children might want to have something like this, almost like a superhero power. Um, but he says, even if it is a gift of prophecy, now, even that alone on its own can be a danger, because if you're not doing it out of love, then it is a problem. Even that can still cause you to fail and cause problems in your life. But here we can see that Paul is not belittling any of the gifts. And actually, if you look at verse 1 in chapter 14, no, I think it's verse 5, it says, I would like every one of you to speak in tongues, but I would rather have you prophesy. Meaning, he says that prophesying, which is speaking the will of God and not just foretelling what's going to happen, it's just even convicting people of their sin is part of prophecy. So it is a very good gift to have, and he is telling that you need to eagerly desire spiritual gift. Yes, but after you've had uh, give enough importance to love, and do it out of the attitude to serve others, not to puff your own self and to put yourself on a pedestal. Now, one of the things that I heard is that miracles don't change a heart, and that is obvious, right? So many people have seen miracles, and but they haven't come to know Christ. They haven't had a change of heart. And if you see, love itself is a very difficult thing to do. It doesn't happen like overnight. And so we see that miracles are happening and but then on its own it cannot cause a change of heart. So we have to um, be careful about what we believe in, and yeah, so we have to put the right importance to the real gifts that God wants us to have. Now, the third thing that he mentions is actually quite interesting, because when you see it, you say that, okay, who will give to the poor? Usually, a person full of love only can give it, or who will sacrifice themselves, give themselves to be burnt also, aren't those people full of love? But no, it can also happen from a different attitude. Some people do it just to feel good. Some people like the praise they get from the people. They like to be held in a higher regard, and or earn good points. Okay, I have given to so many people, so God also can give me this many things, or He can cancel this sin. Actually, this is a karma law that we see some of our friends, Hindu friends, having. So if at all giving is done, it is done with a very selfish motive. So when God, who sees our heart and the attitude with which we give, He knows what is motivating us to give. What about sacrificing oneself, being ready to die? So you say you'll be ready to die. It's a very brave thing to say, but many do it just to gain heaven, or to prove that, yes, we are a true follower, we are a great follower. And if you see, actually, this picture is of the Twin Towers, how the suicide bombers were ready to die. They were ready to die because probably one of these things, so they have the Jannat, they have, things to prove, and also they have also this thing of proving to their family is very proud of what they have done, even though it is killing so many people. So if you see in this case, motive to sacrifice yourself. And so when you see in all these three things that you see, whether it is speaking very grand, uh, in a grand way, or having the faith to move mountains, prophesying, giving your as much you want to the poor, but so even sacrificing all these things, even though in itself they are very good, but when it is done with a motive to prop ourselves up, it can be against what God wants, and He doesn't consider that as much important as this gift of love. And so, what is love? Actually, if you read this, many people say put your name in that, and it's the hardest thing to do if you see, because with the very first thing we seem to fail, right? So, what is love? Is love is patient, love is kind. So these are the positive two things that come in the beginning, and there's one at the end also, two things at the end. But these are the first two things that come. Love is patient, love is kind. So if you go into the details of this, now if you think about what is patience, it is a capacity to accept or tolerate delay. Now this is very tricky part, whether it be delays or problems or suffering itself, without being annoyed or anxious. This is what is the meaning of patience. But for me, actually, it would be the very first thing I'll have to stop and I'll say I can't go any further, because if you say I'll sit and work on patience, it seems like it'll take an eternity to sort us out. But let's see what a impatient person will look like. There are people who would like to get things done fast, right? And they are frustrated when they are not already done. So people who kind of hurry people up, right? They pressure others to get things done and may follow up on items that seem to be taking too long. This whole thing seemed to describe me sometimes. So this is something I keep doing. I keep, like to get things done fast, and I have no patience with others. So this is something I am working. I'm a work in progress, but this is something that we all need to know about. But let's see what is God-like. If you see, in Peter it comes that the Lord is not slow in keeping His promises. Some understand slowness. Actually, this is a conversation that was going on, and he says, instead, He is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Now this is a character of God. So, and you can see in the life of Jesus also, He was patient with His disciples, and even with Judas, the one who was stealing money from the money bag. He was patient with His disciples when they didn't understand. They were ignorant and they were not able to understand things He was trying to tell them, but He was patient with all of them. And this is a character that we learn is from God. um, and that's what we come to. When it comes to dealing with our impatience, we know that we have to start with God, because it's a character from God. Um, but some of the things that we can do to say get an antidote to this impatience is to we need to learn to make ourselves wait, and also stop doing things that are not important. Sometimes we clutter our life with many things, and then it takes over our time. We get tired, and then the impatience comes in. And we need to be mindful of things that make us impatient. So before an event actually takes place, we should know that these are my triggers, be it traffic jams or uh, things that are at home, children's reactions. So if we are aware, okay, this situation is going to make me impatient, so we can be a step ahead. But I think we need to evaluate our attitude that is causing us to be impatient. And if you see at the heart of the matter, if you go to the heart of the matter, it could be that my agenda or our own agenda is more important than what is important to others. And we kind of push it down others' throats when we kind of force them to do it our way. We also may not be aware of others' strengths and weaknesses. Maybe they are really struggling to do things, and we are probably being impatient with them. It happens with kids, and yeah, so we need to know whether they're struggling with it, and we should be also kind and considerate when it comes to their weaknesses. And the next one is love is kind. And if you see, this is a quality of being friendly, generous, and considerate. And who wouldn't like these characters, right? To be friendly, to be generous, and considerate. And this is something we would like others to show to us. And also, we know that people like to be around those who are kind. And it is also said that kids are generally attracted to people who are kind. And you know that even Jesus, the children came to see Jesus, and the disciples said, "Stay away from this great teacher. He doesn't have time for small children." But Jesus had to tell them, "No, let them come to me." And that's what love is about. You're ready to give off your time, to be generous, with your time, to spend that time, and also to be considerate, so understand what people are going through. So that is a step that um, comes through, the spirit itself, if you see. So love is kind, and it's a character that we can keep working on. um, but there's a whole list of things that love is not. So if you go back to the verse 4, it starts off with these three divisions, I would see. It says, um, it does not envy, it does not boast, and it is not proud. I somehow found that it was like a clubbing of these three things. But if you see, the thing about envy or jealousy, I put a picture of this people turning green looking at each other. So it says you go green with envy. But whatever color you become, but envy is something that really eats up a heart. And the best of us kind of do a little bit of envy. And so we need to ask God to help us with that. But if you see, the Bible has a lot of stories of people who are jealous and have got into trouble, starting with the very first sin. Cain murdered his brother Abel because he was jealous. You go down the line, Moses, Miriam was jealous of Moses, and Jesus himself had to go on the cross because of the jealousy of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. So envy is something that rots a soul, and it comes from a very um, bad emotion, to prove that you're better than the others, and you want to be the one whom everybody looks to and are envious for. You don't want to see somebody else get ahead, and that emotion is sort of what prompts people to boast. So when we do something, so we kind of want to say, okay, this is what I've done, and try to make sure that everybody gets to hear about it. So that again is to make sure that everybody else is envious of us. So that is not what love is. Love does not boast, and it is not proud. Pride, I think C.S. Lewis tells that we pride is one of the worst sin that we can have, and love is not all of these things. But also these next set of things come here. It is not, it's not, it does not dishonor others. I think in other versions it says it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, so it does not want to have its own way. Many times it's like we say it's my way or the highway. So we kind of want to have everybody doing what we say, and it feels good, that everybody, even if it is like choosing the color of the paint of the house, or going to a place, whether we go here or there. So in one way, if we want everybody to follow what we say, it's like we are self-seeking. And yes, we there's a little self-love that we see, where Jesus himself says we need to do to others as you would have them do to you. So it says that we all love ourselves, but we do not need to love ourselves so much that it is at the cost of harming others. So if we are careful about that, then we can follow what Jesus is saying. And it is not easily angered. Now, this is connected to impatience. In other versions, it says irritable, irritated easily. It keeps no record of wrongs. Now, this is to do with forgiveness. And the Lord's Prayer itself says, so we need to forgive in order to get forgiveness from God. But secretly, sometimes we have one list at the back of our minds, where we keep this record of wrongs. Okay, this is this, and it sort of comes out in other ways. Even if you say to your mind, okay, I have forgiven this person, somewhere if you are still holding on to some kind of a list that says, okay, this person said this to me, and you kind of not talk to them, or not say hello easily, to say wait for them to say hello. So these are some of the symptoms of having this record of wrong. So if any of us are still doing this, we need to go to God and ask Him to help us with this. And love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. Now, this is again to do with the keeping of record. So, when there's somebody who's hurt you and they end up in trouble, so is there a secret joy in seeing someone suffer? And also, so we need to be careful about that. Uh, but what does love do? It rejoices with the truth, and it stands for the truth. So this is something actually uh, we need to do. This is a positive thing that love does. So if you see, the first two are positive. Love is patient, love is kind, and now here it is rejoices with the truth. um, but how is such a task possible? If you think about this, it's as bad, or as impossible as a Sermon on the Mount. uh, you think, okay, how you don't get past, love is patient, and so how do we do something like this? And so we need to go back to what uh, Jesus says, and also in 1 John it says, we love because He first loved us. Our strength. So it is not that we don't even know how to love actually. The love that the world teaches. It is a very give and take. You do your bit, I'll do my bit. But Jesus came to show us a different kind of way of loving, and He first loved us, and showed us how it is done. In Philippians 2, this is also another famous chapter, says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. And it lists how Jesus gave up heaven and came to this earth, and took the lowest position. So when you think about how Jesus made this world upside down, like what the world values and what God actually values. When it comes to showing love, being patient, nobody is going to, go on the streets and say, this person has done something like this. You will not get any recognition. You will not get any buddy saying, this person has done this. So because of that, the other things are highlighted. But we need to have this attitude of Jesus. Whatever happens, we know that God is seeing what is done in secret, and He will reward us. Um, so this is about the first part of the chapter. It goes on to actually say of how all other gifts will cease, whether it be the gift of prophecy or uh, even knowledge, all kinds of knowledge, even all of that will pass away. And he even says in the end that now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, and how love is eternal. When it comes to faith and hope, it is going to end, right? Because once we see God face to face, once we see Jesus face to face, our faith doesn't have to keep going, because we've already seen it happen. But we will continue to love, and this is something we all need to work on. And I just want to ask each of us, so where are we when it comes to loving others? And do we really give importance? Are we like giving importance to the best speakers, or people who speak in, very knowledgeably? Whom do we give importance to, and what do we give importance to? So let's um, really look into our lives. If anyone wants to share something that, probably you also have dealt with, or something that you've been able to overcome, or have um, been able to have success at, so whatever it is, you can share that, and then we can close in prayer.